What's up everyone? Welcome to Optimum Media. This is the first video on the channel, so I can't thank you enough for tuning in and supporting. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to help build the channel. Today we're getting into the NFC East, previewing the entire division for the 2024 season. How we're going to do that is go over some key losses, additions, and the new rookie class that each team has brought in. We'll use the 2023 stats to see if they will build or regress off of last year's team, or if those stats even mean anything with the amount of turnover that we have seen on certain teams within this division. But before that, let's run the intro. Alright y'all, welcome in. We're starting with the winner of the NFC East last year, the Dallas Cowboys, and I'll let you know right now there is a little bit of bias when it comes to it, but I'm going to try and keep that out of the evaluation, keep it out of the video as a whole. All of these teams, except for Dallas, are what I would consider rivals, so I'm not going to let that seep into what I think these teams are going to do. This is all objective. No opinions. There will be some opinions, okay, sorry. But we're going to keep it as objective as possible. Let's start with the Cowboys. Key losses from last year. I mean, where do we even begin? Dan Quinn gone as DC. I know some Cowboys fans are happy about that. Statistically, we've had one of the best defenses in the league since he's taken over as defensive coordinator, when healthy, obviously. But we saw the strategy, the scheme he uses. It hasn't worked in the playoffs, and it really didn't work against the Packers. So positive, negative, I think it could be a little bit of both. Leighton Vander Esch was released. He's medically retired, most likely. Stephon Gilmore, we lost him. Jerron Kearse, I'm not huge on him, and I know a lot of Dallas fans aren't huge on him either, but it is a loss to the secondary that performed very well last year. Seeing how they replace him is going to be interesting. The big losses, though: Tyron Smith, Tyler Biadasz, two pillars of the offensive line. Tyron Smith, obviously, more than the latter in Tyler, but left tackle, Hall of Famer, one of the best that there has been in the 2000s, really, when he was healthy. That's the really big thing. Hopefully he stays healthy for the Jets, but it's a luxury that we don't have anymore, having one of the best tackles in the league on our team. Tyler Biadasz, center. I wasn't a huge fan of him when we first started playing him. He grew on me, and now he's gone. So we'll see. We've got two rookies that we'll get into in a little bit coming in to fill those gaps. Obviously, Tony Pollard is gone. He's on the Titans. Michael Gallup is the last big loss from this team. Released him after a few up and down years after he, reached 1,000 yards that one season, breakout year. Tore his ACL after that. Chose to pay him over Amari is what it seemed, and that just backfired. He went to the Raiders. Now he's retired. So would he have retired if he stayed on Dallas? Who knows? I don't really consider it a huge loss. Additions, short list. It's really not a lot. Mike Zimmer as DC, which I like that move a lot. Ezekiel Elliott in the running back room. Having him back now, sharing a backfield with Rico and Deuce. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. Obviously, the Cowboys were awful when it came to goal line last year. Really, anything within the 5, we couldn't punch it in. Tony Pollard wasn't that back. I feel like we knew he wasn't that back, and we still tried to use him in that role. Ezekiel Elliott was perfect for that role, and now we have him back at a cheaper price. We're not expecting him to go out there and lead the league in rushing yards anymore. He's not going to have the most carries, but that's what's going to work for Zeke in this offense. And finally, Eric Kendricks, middle linebacker, someone we desperately needed. We were running converted safeties at the linebacker spot, and there's, one or two guys that I'm okay with that being the case, Bell being the primary one in that circumstance, but we saw against the Packers in the playoffs, you can't run small personnel against the run. You're just going to get exposed, and that's exactly what happened. Now we have Eric Kendricks, true middle linebacker. He's not a converted safety. We'll have some actual size at the linebacker spot, which should be a given, but with the Cowboys, with Dan Quinn last year, it was not. All right, now into the rookie class. Two offensive tackles, two D linemen, a center, a wide receiver, linebacker, and corner. We'll go in order. 29th pick overall, Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. He's already getting first team reps in training camp. He's looking to be that starting left tackle replacing Tyron. Obviously, you can't just go and replace Tyron Smith, but Tyler Guyton, young guy that we're going to build at that left tackle spot, seems to be working out pretty well so far. Granted, it's just camp. Second round pick, edge Marshawn Nealon out of Western Michigan. I will hand up say I wasn't super familiar with him whatsoever, but same sentiment as Tyler Guyton. Camp has been unbelievable so far when it comes to reviews. Now our third round pick, pick 73, center or guard, Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State. Now he was on the board as a guard. The immediate thought of everyone is that he's being moved to center, and he's played both center and guard in camp so far. We're fine when it comes to guards, though. I can't imagine that he'll just be on the bench behind Zach Martin or Tyler Smith. So him being put into that starting center role is very believable to me. There's also Brock Hoffman from Virginia Tech. He was a rookie last year. And he played well when he was needed to come in, but I don't know if he's the building block of the offensive line that a lot of people are saying that Cooper could be. Time will tell. We'll see. Two rookies in the starting lineup on the offensive line is not something a lot of people are going to be excited about, but at least all the reviews so far are pretty good. Our other third round pick, pick 87 out of Notre Dame, middle linebacker Maurice Liafu. Now that might have been pronounced wrong, and if it was, my apologies. Like I said earlier, though, we were in desperate need of middle linebacker help, really linebacker help in general. He's got size, he's got speed. Now, we didn't have a fourth round pick. Fifth round, 174, cornerback Kalen Carson out of Wake Forest. He has been a stud. We are very good at drafting offensive linemen and DBs, okay, as of recently, okay? Offensive linemen, we go way back with good drafting there. DBs recently, Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland, now Kalen Carson. We could be set. We could be set. But Diggs is coming back from an ACL injury. Deron Bland just had an amazing season last year, so hopefully there's not a slump like we kind of saw with Trayvon Diggs after his record-breaking season. We'll just have to see. Sixth round pick, wide receiver out of Southeast Missouri State, Ryan Flournoy. If you said you knew a lot about this guy and you're not from Southeast Missouri, I would say that you're lying. All right, because I have no idea how this guy is going to do. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know if he's going to be on, the final roster. But our wide receiver 3 position is wide open, right? We talked about the loss of Gallup, who was our 3 last year. Now we've got Turpin, we've got Flournoy in contention for that, and a couple other guys that could definitely be in a rotation, or they could just straight up be competing for that spot. We had 2 7th-round picks, tackle out of Louisiana, Nathan Thomas, and defensive tackle, Justin Rogers. Now, 2023 stats. Seeing where we're building from. Obviously, the offense is going to be pretty much the same schematically, same OC. Mike McCarthy still calling the shots. And we had a plus 10 turnover differential. Dak was not turning the ball over and tied for 5th with a plus 10 turnover differential. Offensively, 5th best in yards per game, 1st best in points per game. We had the 3rd best passing attack by yards, and rushing was the weakness on the offense, 14th. Moving to the defensive side, we were allowing just about 300 yards a game, 299.7 to be exact. That's 5th in the NFL last year. We had the 5th best scoring defense in the NFL last year as well. The secondary was on point last year, and that's even with Diggs missing most of the year. We allowed the 5th least passing yards per game at 187.4, and rushing wise, 16th best. So middle of the pack, just like on offense. 112 rush yards allowed, which is a yard short of what we were getting on offense. So that was a wash. And when it comes to playoff football later in the season football, or depending on who you're playing, like maybe the Eagles in our division, the rushing game is going to be very, very important. and it just doesn't seem like that's going to be a strength for the Cowboys this year, just like it wasn't last year. Clear strengths, passing and defending the pass. Wide receiver core will have a new three, like I mentioned, and they still need to pay CD. The secondary lost Gilmore, but Carson has been getting glowing reviews like I talked about. The whole group should be great again this year, in my opinion. I said I was going to keep it objective. If you say that this group wasn't great last year, I don't know what you were watching. Gilmore is a big loss, but if Carson is even a fraction of what they say he is, we should be in good shape. Clear weakness, as I mentioned, both sides of the running game. The running back room is undoubtedly weaker, and the offensive line is unproven in two key positions, starting rookies, like I said. Good reviews, but that doesn't mean shit until they get onto the field. The linebacker room has improved, but the interior D-line is unproven as well. They'll need Mozzie Smith to step up in his sophomore season, and rookie Marshawn Nealon as well, depending on where he's placed. Because I've seen some things where he could be a guy that they put on the interior, but he was drafted as an edge. So we'll have to see. Either way, his presence on that D line should help the run defense. We'll have to see though. And on top of that, speaking of the D line, we've already lost Sam Williams, defensive end, to an ACL MCL tear. To wrap up the Cowboys, I'll give my record prediction. Last year they went 12-5, 5-1 in conference. I don't think that they go 5-1 again. I do think, sorry Giants fans, that they'll sweep the Giants, split the games with Philly, split the games with Washington, 4-2 in conference, and an 11-6 overall record. One game worse than last year, but all of these people talking about how the Cowboys are going to win 9 games this year, maybe miss the playoffs this year. I get it. All right, I really do. I've watched all these playoff games. I've watched us get embarrassed multiple times in the first or second round, and it's not fun. But to say that a team led by the same leaders in Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott that have won 12 games each of the past 3 seasons, Dak has only gotten better statistically every single year except for, the one down year with the interceptions. Besides that, he's got the best, no, even including that, he's got one of the best turnover ratios in NFL history. So you want to call him, turnover prone, be my guest. He's not. The numbers back that up. All right. So a team that's gone 12-5 for 3 consecutive seasons, taking a massive step back to like 9 wins after they've helped the rushing defense. The secondary is just as strong, and really the only loss is in the running game, which already wasn't that good last year. I don't see how people can predict such a dramatic negative change for the Cowboys, but that can be its own video. I'm not going to spend more time on that. Let's get into the next team. Second place team last year from the NFC East was the Philadelphia Eagles, 11-6 and 4-2 in division. Key losses: Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator, gone. Sean Desai as the defensive coordinator, gone. Jason Kelce, Hall of Fame center. DeAndre Swift, now with the Bears at running back. They definitely upgraded at running back, though. Don't get me wrong. Fletcher Cox retired, Hall of Famer. Kevin Byard in the secondary is gone as well. He came over from Tennessee. Now he's with the Bears. And Nicholas Morrow rounds out their key losses. Now additions. They replaced Brian Johnson with Kellen Moore. Cowboys fan perspective, I wasn't the biggest fan, but maybe he turns this offense into more of a split between passing and running. It's kind of hard to imagine that when you improved at the running back spot, and Jalen Hurts is who he is on the ground as well. But we saw first year of Kellen Moore being the OC in Dallas, passing yards went significantly up. I don't know how that's going to work here. We'll see. Vic Fangio, NFL legend. He's been coaching in the NFL since like 86, right? People talk about him defensively year in, year out. So I do think that's a pretty good pickup at the DC spot. Saquon Barkley, the biggest move probably in the entirety of the NFL. I mean, Kirk Cousins to Atlanta was massive, but I think people were more just shocked about the money that he got, not so much the impact that he's going to have on that team. Granted, they're going to be good, and we'll get into that in the NFC South video. But Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, to an offense that was already 8th overall in yards per game, 7th in points per game, rushing they were 8th with 130 per game. Adding him, forget about it. They're going to be a great team on the ground. Now, obviously, they lost Jason Kelsey up the middle, but everyone's been talking about the guy that they've got filling in. They also drafted 2 interior O linemen, which we'll get to in a second. They just seem to be working in the right direction when it comes to that. Paris Campbell brought in at the wide receiver spot. We know that they're set when it comes to wide receiver. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, whoever you put in at the 3 can have production, but it's not going to take away from those top 2 guys. CJ Uzama, similar thing. Dallas Goedert is not going to lose reps to CJ. He'll come in when he needs to come in, but it's just a good depth piece to have, especially with Dallas being hurt a couple times over the past few years. Mekhi Becton coming in from the Jets, highly touted guy out of college. We'll see how he fits in with that offensive line that seems to already be pretty set. Time will tell. Bryce Huff on the defensive side, that's a big addition. Devin White is a bigger addition, I think, at the middle linebacker spot. I don't think anybody from Tampa Bay really gets as much credit as they deserve, especially when it comes to their linebackers. Lavonte David, whole nother conversation. Again, NFC South video, we'll get into that. But Devin White is a really good addition for the Eagles here. CJ GJ as well. CJ Gardner-Johnson came back to the Eagles from the Lions after all the shit talk that he was doing. He's back. That secondary needs it. They were god-awful last year. So that addition is pretty key, especially with Kevin Byard now being with the Bears. Now, I talked about how bad the secondary was. Those were the first 2 draft picks by the Eagles. Quinion Mitchell from Toledo, Cooper DeJean from Iowa. Arguably the 2 best corners in the draft. They got both of them. Of course they did. They always draft well. Their 3rd round pick was a D-end out of Houston Christian, Jalix Hunt. Your opinion is as valid as mine when it comes to that, because I don't know who the hell that guy is. But like I said, the Eagles always draft well, so trust him when it comes to that. He'll probably be good. Running back Will Shipley from Clemson. I was kind of hoping Dallas would pick him up later in the draft, and the Eagles jumped on it. I think he'll be a solid running back 2 this year. You're not going to take snaps away from Saquon, though, so kind of drew the short end of the stick with that. 5th round pick, wide receiver out of Texas A&M, Ainias Smith. Didn't see him. Really didn't see him. There was a lot going on with Texas A&M last year, and it was not about the players on the field. It was about the huge buyout with Jimbo and getting Mike Elko from Duke. So I'll hand up say that I really didn't see him. They brought in Paris Campbell. They have him. Wide receiver 3 spot is wide open. So I'm assuming that they will be competing for that, as well as another 6th round pick they had in Johnny Wilson from Florida State. Trevor Keegan from Michigan at guard, and center Dylan McMahon from NC State are the 2 interior offensive linemen that they brought in. Now, 2023 stats, they operated at a -10 turnover differential, 26th in the league, and some of that, or a lot of it, comes from the secondary couldn't produce a turnover to save their life. All right, we'll get into that in a second. Offensively, they had the 8th best offense, 7th best on points per game, 16th best passing attack, rushing 128.8 yards per game. That's 8th best in the league. That will get better with Saquon. Defensively, 356 yards allowed per game. That's 26th in the league. And when it comes to points allowed per game, 25.2, that's 30th. And like I've hammered multiple times now, the secondary was that main issue. 31st best when it comes to pass yards allowed per game at 252.7. Now, the rushing defense, much better. Top 10, 10th in the league at 103.4. Now, Fletcher Cox is gone. We'll have to see if they make adjustments. Obviously, Vic Fangio, notably one of the best defensive minds of this generation, and probably the generation before as well. He's been coaching for 40 years. He'll make adjustments. They'll be fine. But they really didn't draft anyone other than Jalix Hunt to help that D-line. And really, maybe they don't need it as much as other people are thinking. They've got a bunch of youth there, all those guys from Georgia that they've been drafting for the past 4 years. Since Georgia's become the factory they are, they've been getting all the good players on defense, it seems. So they'll be fine. There was a good group last year. It'll be a good group this year. Conversely to the Cowboys, the Eagles' clear strengths come in the trenches. The run game offense, top 10. Defense, top 10. They both got better, in my opinion. D Swift to Saquon is a huge upgrade if he can stay healthy. That's the biggest thing, the health for Saquon. Jason Kelce not being there is a big loss, but the rest of the line is still great. They upgraded at linebacker. The rookie on the D line, Jalix Hunt, has potential to replace Cox. Maybe not right away, but he will make an impact. I won't say the passing offense was a weakness last year. It's obviously a run-heavy offense, so lower numbers are going to happen. But Jalen Hurts had some turnover issues that I don't think people were really expecting him to have last year, and it certainly didn't help the offensive numbers when it comes to passing. They still have those two great receivers, like I mentioned, in AJ and Devonta. Their secondary was atrocious. They spent their first 2 picks on the top 2 corners in the draft. They got CJ GJ back. There's a good chance secondary looks worlds better than it was last year. Record prediction, similar to the Cowboys, I think the Eagles split the series with Dallas. They split the series with Washington, and they sweep the Giants. I think they go 11-6 as well. It's going to come down to a tiebreaker, I do believe. There's too many good teams for, all these top-end teams to be going 13-4, 12-5. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are between the 12-10 range, and that's going to make up the majority of your playoff teams. I think both of these teams have a really good chance of making the playoffs, regardless of what the other team does record-wise. Moving into the New York Giants, who finished third in the division last year, 6-11 overall, 3-3 in division. Now losses, minus Saquon Barkley. None of these are really like eyebrow-raising losses. Defensive coordinator and Don Martindale. If you want to retain anything from that defense last year, I don't know what you were watching. Saquon Barkley being gone though is massive. Darren Waller is making heartbreak songs. I hope he's doing well, football wise. Like what have we seen from him in the past couple of years? I mean, at one point, one of the top tight ends in the game for sure. But as of right now, I don't really think that's a massive loss. He was on the tail end of his career anyways. Whatever's going on in his life seemingly expedited that process. Jihad Ward, though, is a decent loss from that defense. Adoree Jackson and Xavier McKinney as well in the secondary. Those are noticeable losses. Nothing, like I said, that's going to make you like raise your eyebrows or gasp that, oh my God, how could they let those guys walk away? But this was already a defense that wasn't super good, and I don't think losing players that other teams would like to have is a good track to go down. Now to the additions of the squad. New defensive coordinator Shane Bowen coming over from Tennessee. Brian Burns from Carolina. Huge deal. Got him for a steal as opposed to what they were trying to trade him off for last year. Massive, massive pickup. Also on defense, Jalen Mills brought in at the cornerback spot. I don't think that really changes how this defense will be next year. He's been okay at best with the Eagles and then the Patriots. Former 7th-round pick. It's a good body to have in there, more depth, but nothing that really changes things too much for me. Devin Singletary bringing in a new running back to try and replace Saquon. You can't replace Saquon. Devin Singletary was fine for the Bills. He was okay with the Texans, but he really wasn't getting as much burn as you would expect him to. He'll be the starter here, no doubt, but what can you really say? Isaiah McKenzie, Allen Robinson, those are two guys that, probably best years are behind him. Allen Robinson for sure. He's bounced around to a few teams these past 3 years. It's nice to have depth there. They're obviously not going to be in the starting lineup. Jack Stoll at tight end, need a tight end, and Drew Lock as the backup is a pretty good backup to have, but I don't think he's better than having Tyrod Taylor back there. Now, into the rookie class. Obviously, Malik Neighbors out of LSU was a huge pickup, much needed weapon for this offense. We'll get into that later. 2nd-round pick, defensive back Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. 3rd-round pick, another DB, Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. 4th-round pick, Theo Johnson from Penn State to try and fill that gap that Darren Waller's leaving. Maybe not Jack Stoll being the every down tight end. 5th-round pick, running back Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue. He had a decent season last year, about 700 yards, but Again, what can you do with a shaky O-line and the expectations of trying to replace Saquon Barkley? Not much. Hopefully he'll be good for them though. And finally, their 6th-round pick linebacker out of UCLA, Darius Muasua, which I definitely said that wrong, so I apologize. In all, 2 DBs, 1 wide receiver, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 1 linebacker. 2023 stats. This surprised me. They were tied for first with the best turnover differential in the league at plus 12. The defense, while they were allowing a bunch of yards, they were also generating turnovers, and an offense led by majority backups in Tyrod and Tommy DeVito, they weren't really turning the ball over that much as well. 29th offense based on yards, 30th based on points. They were barely putting up 15 points a game, right? 31st pass attack with 170 per game, 110 rushing yards per game. That puts them at 16th, dead middle in the league. Really only a couple yards off what Dallas was getting. So rushing wise, they were fine. The offensive line outside of, the tackle, I don't think there's really much to write home about there. They definitely have guys that have left some play to be desired. Defensively, 27th in the league when it comes to yards allowed, 26th in points allowed. They had the 19th best secondary when it comes to passing yards allowed. I know that's not just the secondary, it's also the pass rush as well. And then rushing yards allowed, they were 29th. So statistically, there's nothing on here except for pass yards allowed, which they're 19th, and rushing yards per game on offense that they were within the top 20 in the league. Everything else, 29, 30, 31, 29, 26. Nothing good. Nothing to write home about at all. And really nothing to get excited about this year, I don't think. The Giants were a team that were led by their backup QBs, Tyrod and Tommy, like I mentioned. Daniel Jones only played in 6 games. In those games, he had a 2-to-6 touchdown to interception ratio. He was awful. But now he's obviously back this year as the starter, and they don't really have an option to go somewhere else, I don't think. They gave him a 4-year, $160 million contract after a season where he threw 15 touchdowns and 5 picks. He ran for 7 and 700 yards, which is something that most quarterbacks haven't done outside of Lamar and Justin Fields. So that's a huge, huge upside. But to give him $40 million a year just because he didn't turn the ball over as much as he used to, seemingly, it's a big investment. And now they're kind of stuck. They're giving a lot of money to a quarterback who probably doesn't warrant that much money. And when it comes to predicting how he's going to play this year, I mean, it seems like you'd be just as accurate putting a blindfold on and throwing a dart at a dartboard. I mean, you have no idea, no clue how he's going to play this year. It's been mostly down and then that one up year, and then he started last year on a 2-to-6 touchdown to interception ratio. So I really don't know. But we'll go to the positive side. The addition of Burns, like I mentioned, is huge, especially with Thibodeau on that line as well. Malik Neighbors being their 1st-round pick, massive, one of the best wide receivers in college ball, and apparently he's already a game changer in camp so far. He's also starting fights for no reason. And I think you kind of want that dog when it comes to your wide receiver 1. If Hyatt can break through, if Slayton can stay healthy, and if Malik Neighbors is even a fraction of what people are predicting he's going to be, that'll be a really decent trio of wide receivers. The issue is who's throwing them the ball and who's the running back that's going to take attention away from that passing game. If they don't have to put anybody in the box because your running game is non-existent, you can have the best wide receivers in the world. They're going to get schemed around. They're going to get planned for every week. And if there's no one in the box, obviously Daniel Jones can run, so they'll put a spy on him. But if there's no one in the box and it's just DBs out there, there's not really much you can do. My record prediction, I think they split the series with the Commanders. I think they lose both games to the Eagles and to the Cowboys. I think they go 5-12. They take a step back, just a game, but they take a step back from last year. Their schedule is not easy at all, and it's just when you look up the matchups, when you look at who's playing who week in, week out, I just don't think there's a lot of favorable matchups for them. And now, the team that was 2nd in the draft, last in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. 4-13 last year. This team is brand new. And with that fact, it is nearly impossible to use last year's stats as a true starting point for this squad. I'm going to anyway, but just take it with a grain of salt. That just because last year they were the worst in 5 of these statistical categories that I'm bringing up today, that doesn't mean they're going to be the worst next year. This team is brand new. Obviously, they replaced Ron Rivera with Dan Quinn. They replaced Eric Bieniemy with Cliff Kingsbury, and they replaced Jack Del Rio with Joe Witt Jr. Sam Howell, back up in Seattle now. Logan Thomas is with the 49ers now. Curtis Samuel is now with the Bills. Left tackle, left guard, and center. All 3 of them gone. Montez Sweat was a midseason trade to the Bears. Chase Young was a midseason trade to the Niners. He's now on the Saints. Right in, James Smith-Williams is gone. Cody Barton at linebacker, gone. Linebacker Kaliki Hudson, gone. The right end and the 2 linebackers, you know the names, but they're not turning any heads. These will. In the secondary, which was already struggling last year, Kendall Fuller, one of the, best safeties, best DBs to come out of Virginia Tech, has had a great career so far. He's loved being in Washington. He went back to Washington after winning a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. He's gone. He's in Miami. And Cameron Curl, great young safety as well. He's now with the Rams. Who did they replace them with, though? Jeremy Chin, safety from the Panthers, is now in here. That's a good pickup. Noah, I'm not even going to try his last name. It'll be just offensively bad. He's a corner from the Cowboys. I've watched him for years. I've heard his name spoken 1,000 times. I'm still not going to attempt it. Just look it up. All right? Just look it up. You try by yourself and let me know in the comments if you could pronounce that last name. Austin Eckler is in here from the Chargers. We saw him have a massive decline last year, and I kind of think he was hurt for most of it. He's in a better position now that he's not going to be the every down back. He's going to be used more in the passing game, get Brian Robinson Jr. more as the focal point. Not really a 50-50 split there, I don't think. At least it shouldn't be. Byron Pringle coming in, kind of filling exactly what that Curtis Samuel role was. Tyler Biadasz, center from the Cowboys. Michael Dieter on the offensive line as well. Dorrance Armstrong Jr., D-end from the Cowboys. They got Cleveland Farrell. He was on that Clemson team that went crazy with Deshaun. He's been pretty decent in the NFL so far on the defensive side. I already mentioned Jeremy Chin. Dante Fowler, linebacker from the Cowboys. Noah, who I already mentioned earlier. Frankie Louvu, linebacker from the Panthers. Big pickup. And Riley Patterson coming in for Joey Sly, who went to the Jags. Now, into the rookie class. I'll be honest, even as a Cowboys fan, the Commanders owned this draft. First round pick, number 2 overall, Jaden Daniels out of LSU, Heisman winner, should turn the franchise around. Second round pick, Jerzon Newton out of Illinois on the D line. Another second round pick, DB Mike Sanderstill out of Michigan, national champions. Tight end Ben Sinnott from Kansas State to replace the Logan Thomas role. Third round pick, offensive lineman Brandon Coleman out of TCU. Another third rounder, Luke McCaffrey, CMC's brother, wide receiver out of Rice. Fifth round pick, linebacker Jordan McGee out of Temple. Another fifth rounder, DB Dominique Hampton out of Washington. Seventh round pick, D lineman Javonte Jean-Baptiste from Notre Dame. All in all, 2 D linemen, 2 DBs, a quarterback, offensive lineman, tight end, and a linebacker. Now, I said that we can't really use the stats from last year to base this new team because it is just that, a brand new team. But we're going to put these stats in here just for context. 2023, they were operating at a -14 turnover differential. That was dead last in the league. They were getting 312 yards per game on offense. That's 24th. They were tied for 24th in points per game with 19.4. The passing attack was getting just under 220 per game. That's 18th in the league. Sam Howell showed flashes. He had 21 touchdown passes, but 21 interceptions came along with that. Rushing, 93.6 yards per game. That is 27th in the league. So nothing inside the top 20, barely inside the top 25 when it comes to yards and points. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, they were allowing 388 yards per game. That is the worst in the league. 30.5 points allowed per game, also the worst. Following that up, another worst in the league is their passing yards allowed. Like I mentioned earlier, the secondary was already struggling before losing two key safeties. They were allowing 262 passing yards per game, and then on the ground, they were 27th, allowing 126. So, as I stated earlier, it's impossible to use those stats as a true starting point for this squad. Of course, every team is a new team year to year with all the turnover that comes in the NFL, but this is truly not the same team at all. New coaching staff entirely, obviously DQ from the Cowboys in his first head coaching spot since the Falcons. Cliff Kingsbury stepping back into the NFL after spending a year on the beach and then spending a year as an offensive analyst for USC. Joe Witt Jr., Cowboys DB coach, worked under DQ, going to bring the same scheme to the Commanders. They upgraded the entirety of the left side of the O-line. I don't think it's crazy to say that the linebacker room is going to be noticeably better either. Frankie Louvu is a great pickup. The D-line has been strong in the past, but obviously mediocrity was not going along with the paychecks that they were going to have to write to those top-end guys, so they traded Sweat and Young. And to be fair, Young had been kind of disappointing for his draft spot, really based on injuries, but also some effort questions as well, if you know the video I'm talking about. They're changing up some of the personnel on the D-line. Because of that, they brought in Jerzon Newton from Illinois, high on everybody's board. Him falling to the early second round was really a gift in their lap. Like I said, they own the draft. Jane Daniels is expected to be a significant upgrade from Sam Howell. The secondary is really what worries me. Losing safeties Fuller and Curl are big losses to a defense who already allowed the most passing yards in the league. They did bring in Chin. I've mentioned that a couple times now, and they drafted Sanders Still out of Michigan. So it's not huge regression, but it's still like they have to prove that first, right? They can't just come in and be on the same level as Fuller and Curl automatically. They got to prove it. They already have a young group of corners who underperformed last year, obviously. I don't know if I'm expecting this group to have a significantly better showing, but anything other than last is better than last, obviously. Finally, I know the Commanders are hype right now, all the fans. New ownership, getting rid of Snyder, big deal. Agreed. New coaching staff, a lot of new players, and I do believe they will be a better team. But something I'm not hearing enough about is the fact that the Commanders love to shit on the Cowboys, coaches and players alike, every year. But now, they've got our old defensive coordinator, our old DB's coach, a former defensive end in Dorrance Armstrong, our former center in Tyler Biadasz, outside linebacker Dante Fowler Jr., and the cornerback in Noah. They think everything is turned around. I don't know how that adds up. The same defensive strategy that got us exposed in the run game all season and embarrassed in the playoffs versus the Packers is what you guys are going to be running. The consistent use of nickel and dime defense versus offensive packages where they are completely outmanned will be seen this coming season. The two key differences I see are the Commanders having a better linebacker room than what Dallas had last year, so that's a positive. But negatively, the Cowboys' secondary was significantly better than what the Commanders have this year, and that was without Diggs for most of the season. So again, they will be a better team for sure, but I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. And I think a lot of the fans that are calling for them to, take the step above the Cowboys this year have to take a step back and look. You guys have half of our players from last year. I mean, two coaches, like they're going to be running the same exact thing that you saw Dallas run, and you are clowning Dallas for running it. That's your team now. I think you're going to be better than last year. My record prediction is 7-10, and I think they split all three series with the NFC East teams within the division. I've mentioned it with the other teams already. Giants are going to split it. Dallas, they'll split it. And Philly, they'll split it. But I don't think they're a playoff team just yet. I think it's hard to assume that just because we saw CJ put up such a big year as a rookie last year that every rookie that comes in is going to play just as well. Even though he just won a Heisman, I get it. It's different. It's the NFL. He'll be good. He's got to stay healthy, maybe adjust the play style just a little bit, not take away what you drafted him to do, but he's got to stay healthy. I think they go 7-10. Next year we get more into the 9-10, maybe get the wild card type thing. But for this year, that's it. And that's all I have for the NFC East today. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you agree, disagree, let me know, and I'll make adjustments moving forward. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.